Keanu Reeves was calmly standing in the first-class line at the airport, dressed in a simple manner, a stark contrast to the opulence around him. In front of him, a man stood eyeing him with clear disdain, his arrogance practically oozing from every glance. What happened next was nothing short of extraordinary, leaving everyone around them speechless and forever altering the life of one man. But before we dive into that moment, let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you enjoy stories like this, be sure to subscribe, because tomorrow we have another amazing tale waiting for you. The bustling Los Angeles airport was as crowded as ever, with people rushing to their gates, luggage wheels clattering against the floor, and conversations blending into a constant hum. In the middle of all this chaos, one man stood completely composed, standing quietly in the first-class line. That man was Keanu Reeves. He wore a plaid shirt, faded jeans, and worn boots, carrying a backpack that looked like it had been on countless adventures with him. Nothing about him screamed wealth or fame, and because of that, he went mostly unnoticed by the crowd. But there was something different about him, something that wasn't immediately obvious. It wasn't his attire, it was the serenity in the way he carried himself. While everyone else appeared rushed and anxious, Keanu stood still and tranquil. He absorbed the chaos around him without letting it affect his inner peace, almost as if he were in a world of his own. He didn't seem bothered by the stares, or the way his presence contrasted with the luxury of the other first-class passengers. Behind him in line stood Victor Harding. Victor was the exact opposite. He was impeccably dressed in an expensive suit, with polished shoes and a scent of cologne that practically demanded attention. Every step he took was deliberate, his body language speaking volumes about how he wanted the world to perceive him. Victor's eyes scanned the line, and when they landed on Keanu, he couldn't help himself. "First class, huh?" Victor said with an ironic smile. "You never know who's going to show up here these days." Keanu turned slightly toward him, maintaining his calm demeanor. "Yeah, the world is full of surprises," he replied simply. Victor paused, seemingly expecting a more defensive or reactive response. But Keanu said nothing, giving the impression that the comment didn't bother him in the slightest. Victor, not one to give up easily, pressed further. "Look, no offense, but you don't seem like the type who'd fly first class," he said with a laugh. "It's rare to see someone so casual up here." The time to board arrived, and the first-class line began to move. Keanu and Victor, without exchanging any more words, followed with their tickets in hand. Victor walked confidently, his pace quick and determined. Keanu, on the other hand, moved at the same calm, unhurried pace as before, as though the world was in no rush. When they finally boarded the plane and reached their seats, something unexpected happened. Victor double-checked his ticket, then glanced up, and saw Keanu sitting in the seat right next to his. "You've got to be kidding me," Victor muttered under his breath, disbelief written all over his face. He shook his head as he sat down next to Keanu, letting out a short chuckle. The irony of it all seemed almost too much for him to handle. Keanu, however, simply looked over at him with the same composed demeanor, offering a small smile. "Looks like we're traveling together," he said politely. Victor, still trying to hide his discomfort, crossed his arms. It wasn't just the fact that he was now sitting next to Keanu. It was the realization that the very man he had silently judged a moment ago was now in the same exclusive space as him. Keanu's presence seemed to unsettle him in a way he couldn't quite explain. As more passengers boarded, Victor decided to strike up a conversation, though it was far from friendly. "So what do you do for a living?" he asked, his tone casual but laced with the assumption that he already knew the answer. Keanu, adjusting his backpack under the seat in front of him, glanced up and answered simply, "I work in film." Victor's eyebrows shot up, as if he were surprised by the answer. "Oh, I see. Commercials? Small-time stuff?" Keanu gave a small smile and shook his head. "Something like that." Victor, never one to let a conversation go too easily, laughed. "I've always found it interesting how people try to fit themselves into boxes," he said, leaning back. "But sometimes certain spaces just aren't meant for everyone, like first class, for instance." Keanu took a moment, looking at Victor, then calmly replied, "I think we all have our place. And sometimes, it's exactly where we are." Victor let out a short laugh. "That's nice. Philosophical even," he said. "But real life? It's not that simple." Keanu said nothing at first. He simply turned his attention back to the window, signaling that the conversation was over. But Victor wasn't done yet. "You know," he leaned closer to Keanu, "you might be sitting here, but there are things money can't buy. Some places will never really belong to certain people." Keanu didn't respond with words. Instead, he looked at Victor for a moment, his expression a mix of patience and quiet strength. It was a look that seemed to say more than any words ever could. Realizing his attempts to provoke Keanu weren't working, Victor leaned back in his seat, clearly satisfied with himself. He thought he had won the battle. But little did Victor know, Keanu's calmness hit a depth he wasn't prepared for. The flight attendants began serving drinks, and the in-flight service was now in full swing. Victor, ever eager to make a statement, raised his hand. "A glass of champagne, please," he said with a confident smile, something that matches the exclusivity of this seat. The flight attendant, accustomed to serving demanding passengers, nodded professionally. When she reached Keanu, he simply asked for water. Victor didn't miss the opportunity to poke fun at him. "Water?" he asked with a chuckle. "Don't tell me you're going to waste the experience of flying first class on water?" Keanu took the bottle of water from the flight attendant and replied calmly, "I'm fine with this. Sometimes simplicity is enough." Victor squinted, trying to make sense of his response, but he quickly pushed back, his tone sharp. "I guess that works for people who settle for less. Not everyone is born to enjoy the best life has to offer." Keanu took a sip from his bottle and remained silent, allowing the words to hang in the air. Passengers began to take notice of Victor's provocations, but since Keanu remained unbothered, no one intervened. "Maybe the best is different for everyone," Keanu said finally, his voice still calm and steady. Victor wasn't satisfied with that response. Taking a deep breath, he leaned in again. "Well, maybe people who say that just never had access to what really matters," he added, trying to assert his dominance in the conversation. The flight attendant, noticing the growing tension, glanced at them discreetly, but decided to remain neutral. Keanu, however, remained unshaken. He simply nodded, offering nothing more than a slight smile before returning his gaze to the window. Victor, meanwhile, was becoming more and more uncomfortable. His superiority complex was crumbling in the face of Keanu's unwavering composure. He began to shift in his seat, trying desperately to regain control.